Okay, welcome. Um, welcome to today's somatic class. I'm Nicole, and today we're going to do some somatic movement, really gentle movement, and then at the end we're going to do a somatic experiencing practice, which will include a lot of somatic tracking. Um, when you're here, everything is a choice. Your yes and your no is celebrated. And so the first thing we'll start with for the people that are here live, just notice, so this first yes or no, just notice if you want your camera on or off. Maybe today's somewhere where you're okay having your camera on, and maybe you're feeling you want to like connect visually, or notice if you want your camera off and you just want that maybe extra privacy. Okay. And then you can change it throughout the class as well, of course. So then after you've made that decision, just notice how you feel that in your body. Notice where you felt your yes. Notice where you felt your no. And then we'll just take a moment to welcome all the parts of us. So, welcoming yourself to this next 30 minutes where we'll have this practice and welcoming the parts that are maybe not wanting to be here and the parts that do want to be here. And maybe there's parts of you that are somewhere else, thinking about something else. So welcoming that, welcoming the parts that are present, and just remembering that all of you is welcome, every single part. Yeah, and then just notice your body and how you feel right now. And is there any movement you want to take? Is there like a stretch you want to take? Is there like a wiggle or an adjustment so that you feel a little bit more comfortable? Yeah, so just notice that. Yeah. This is nice for me. I actually just got up very recently. I just woke up. So, yeah. And then just notice how that feels after you made that movement. Or maybe you wanted to stay still. So just notice how that feels. And then we're just going to take some time to orient. So, this is a great practice where we're using our eyes to signal to our brain where we are, signal to our nervous system that we're safe. So rather than telling ourselves that we're safe, we're showing our body that it's safe. So just slowly start to look around your room and go about 5% slower than you would normally go. Make sure you're looking all the way behind you and up. And as you're doing this, maybe notice a few colors in your space and just take a moment to really like label that color. So maybe you see a purple. And I'm thinking back to when I was like a kid and I had like my box of crayons, and you know how the crayons had very specific colors, like, I don't know, iris purple or petal pink or green grass. I don't know. So pick a couple colors in your area and just notice like what would you name that color? Make sure you've looked both ways. And then slowly coming back to center. And just notice, was there anything that your eyes kind of gravitated towards? Anything kind of beautiful or interesting in your space that your eyes landed on? And then I like to ask, how did you know it was interesting? How did you know it was beautiful? Is there something in your body that signals it? How does your brain decide something's interesting or pleasant or beautiful? Just sit with that question for a moment and notice. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to wake up our hands. So I'm actually going to call this practice, we're going to call it washing hands. So bringing your hands to actually, the first thing I want you to do is look at your hands. And just really notice the lines on them, the color, maybe notice the temperature. And just in your mind or out loud, you can just say, these are my hands and they belong to me. Okay. And then we're going to pretend wash our hands. So we're going to wake up our proprioception. Um, so first of all, if we're washing your hands, think about what kind of soap that you maybe like. So just think about that. Like if you were to use a soap, what kind would you use? This is imaginary. Right now I've got like this coconut citrus soap that I really like. So maybe imagine how that smells. And then bring your attention to your hands and notice what it's like to rub your hands together. Maybe get in between like each finger. The hands take up a really large space in the brain because we use them so much. So this can be like a really nice sensory input for getting into the body. And maybe notice, is there a certain movement that you like here? And then you can also bring your attention to the wrists. Notice what it's like if we had to wash our wrists. Maybe you're gardening and there's just dirt everywhere. Mm. And then just squeeze the hands together. Notice how that feels. Notice if you want to squeeze more than one or two times and how much pressure you want to use. Do you want your fingers interlaced or do you want them kind of clasping each other? Notice what it feels like to interlace the fingers and then also go the opposite way, the way that doesn't feel as normal. Okay. Yeah. And then again, just look at the hands and just let that rest. And then we're going to do a little bit of waking the feet. So we can do this a couple ways. If you're sitting like me, you may want to massage your feet. So you can do that. If you're sitting on a chair or if you don't want to touch your feet, we're going to do rocking the feet. So I need to back up just a tiny bit. Um, but all you're going to do is just have your feet on the ground and you're going to start rocking your feet back and forth. So again, go a little bit slower than you would normally go and really feel like the balls of your feet and then the toes. And then as you come back, feel the heels landing. And you can also really stretch out your toes, like almost like if your toes were going to play a piano, stretch them out. And maybe imagine your feet are in some nice warm sand, and how would your toes play with the sand? And so just experiment with that and keep going. And this is one of my favorite techniques if I'm feeling um, a lot of charge. So that could be like annoyed or even angry or anxious. Because when we feel that charge, there's a lot of pressure that kind of rises up into our upper body. And so bringing a lot of attention to the lower body, to the feet, can be very grounding and can really bring that down, that level of activation down. Yeah, and even notice what it's like to maybe move one foot one way and then the other one the opposite way. Good. Okay, and then just give your toes one last little wiggle, and then just come back to center. Okay, and then now we're going to do some really gentle shaking. So this won't be intense or anything. So, and when we do this, I want you to imagine the shaking or like really gentle vibrations coming from inside the body. And again, everything here is a yes, it can be a yes or a no. So if anything doesn't resonate, you can always skip it. And then I would just say, notice the no, notice what it feels like to notice your boundary and then follow that. So just imagining there's a little bit of shaking coming from the center of your body and just really, really gentle. Okay, so just really gentle. And then if you want, you can start to bring more of your shoulders into it. We're just going to stay here for a little bit and just notice what this feels like. Right, and then notice if you'd also like to bring it into your arms. So again, it's like going to be pretty gentle. And I mean, if you're feeling like you want to do something a little bit more with a little more force, you're welcome to do that. Just notice how you notice. You want to shake a little bit more or use a little more force. Okay, and then just let that rest. And then that can bring in a little bit of energy. So just notice that, and then notice what it's like to come down from that energy. So as you come down from the energy, I want you to feel your bum wherever that's seated. Then really imagine your sit bones being supported by your chair or the floor. I'm sitting on a cushion. Even imagine the material of that object that you're sitting on and just how it's supporting you, how it holds you up. Give the toes a little wiggle as well. Notice what it's like to come down from bringing in a little bit more energy and then coming back to more calm space. Okay, and then we're gonna do a little bit of joint work. So there's a lot of nerves in our joints, and so this can again be like a nice way to kind of actually bring in more capacity when we wake up the nerves in our joints. So we're gonna just start with our hands, just rotating the wrists. And this is really, really nice if you are in a freeze state. So what I mean by freeze is this could look two ways. You could be in a freeze where you're kind of in more of a shutdown where you're like, I cannot do anything. I can't get out of bed. I don't want to get off the couch. And so this is when you bring in really gentle, small movement. Another way freeze could look is kind of like the deer in the headlights. So it's like we've got all this energy, but we feel stuck. So it's almost like the gas is on and the brakes are on. So this is when we want to bring in really nice, gentle movement. Gentle movement into the hands and then bring it into the elbows. If you want, you can experiment doing one arm at a time. Because then if you're doing that, really bring all of your attention to that elbow. Like, how does it move? Or you can do both at the same time. And then as you're doing this, maybe some signs of regulation that come in would be like a gentle warmth in the body. It could be a spontaneous deep breath that just kind of shows up on its own. Okay, so we're still moving the elbows. If you're moving one elbow, just switch to the other. It could be gentle and pleasant tingling that shows up sometimes in the limbs. It could also be like just feeling a little bit more awake, a little bit more alive. So maybe you see a little bit differently. You feel more connected with your environment. Maybe you're sitting up a little bit straighter, a little more energy there. Let's bring the movement to the shoulders. So bring your attention to the insides of your shoulders, where the joint is, and see what it's like to kind of move from the joint. So really imagining that ball and socket joint in your shoulder and how it moves. And just experimenting with this. And you can do one at a time as well. And this movement can be really, really small. So if your energy's low, you can keep this super gentle and super small. Yeah. Okay. And then just let that rest. And just notice what your arms feel like and your shoulders. Okay. And then let's just do some gentle movement with the neck, whatever feels comfortable for you. Just kind of felt like a natural progression before we go on to the next thing. Okay. And then again, just bring that to the center and then stop and notice. So in somatics, we like to notice how we feel after we would notice how we feel while we're doing the movement. And then we really want to notice what it's like after as well. You even notice what movement felt the most pleasant to you. Remind your body of that. Okay. And now we're going to move into some contraction and expansion. So we're just going to feel what it's like to move um, into when we're kind of feeling maybe more low energy or more like internal to feeling like open and maybe feeling more energy and like a feeling of aliveness. So first we're going to come into, you can do this however you want. But I like to kind of rest my elbows on my knees when I do this. But you could also just like curl in as well. Okay. So curl in, just notice what that feels like. And you can really, if you want, you can put your head in your hands and just really rest. Notice what that feels like to rest and let the weight of your head drop into your hands. And then we're going to slowly start to expand. So I'm giving you the cue, but don't do it yet. Just think about it. Think about how you would do it. Feel kind of the impulse or the urge, and then go ahead and start. Go back. It's nice and straight. Arms go up, shoulders are back. Think about maybe how you would have your head. Your head's to be up here. It could also be here. They could be here. Just whatever feels open to you. And remember, small movement is totally fine. You don't have to do this big like I am. Okay, notice how the chest feels, the belly. Maybe you can really feel your weight sinking into your seat as well. Notice where your eyes go. Mine kind of naturally go up a little bit. Okay, and then come back into that contracted space. So think about it and then go ahead and start to do it and go a little slower than you normally would. Great. And then rest. You notice what it's like to be in this sort of contracted state, allowing the head to hang and the body to curl into itself. Notice what it's like to breathe here. Eyes can be open or closed. Okay, and then one more time, we're going to go into that expansive state. So again, think about it. Think about how you want to do it. Maybe what body part would move first. And then go ahead and do that and get into that expansive state. And really noticing how your spine moves, how your pelvis might move, how your arms and your head and your neck move, maybe how you look around. And I'm going to experiment with putting my arms up high, see how that feels. And notice how it feels to breathe here. And again, eyes can be open or closed. And then we're just going to drop that, come back into just a neutral sitting position. Good. Okay. We're going to move into a meditation now. So This is going to be, we're going to use, so this is somatic experiencing. We're going to do something called pendulating, and we're going to do this with around coping mechanisms. So with coping mechanisms, this could be anything. So this could be like um, emotional eating. And actually, before I go into that, I want to remind you that coping mechanisms are actually a really wonderful way that our body and our nervous system seeks to regulate. So it's your body like trying to keep you safe. Um, and so the behavior is not the problem. The solution, it's actually a solution for your nervous system. And so what we want to do is we want to bring in more safety. And eventually the behavior can sometimes really die down. So first of all, just taking a moment to recognizing that your body's trying to protect you, and just thinking how it's really wonderful that it's found a way to do that, to regulate. So coping mechanisms could be like scrolling on your phone excessively. It could be binge eating or restricting eating. It could be smoking. It could be excessive reassurance seeking. So just think about one thing that is helpful for you and that you use to cope. Okay, so just think about one thing. And then the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to ground. So really feeling your seat. Maybe you want to wiggle back and forth so you can really feel your sit bones. And I just had a little burp, which is a sign of regulation sometimes when your digestive system starts to really go into rest and digest. Okay. And then just notice your space, and is there anything really beautiful or pleasant around you? And just noticing something that makes you kind of feel good. And that's going to be your anchor. So if anything is ever too much, you can just come back and look at that beautiful thing, open your eyes, or think about the beautiful thing or the pleasant thing. Okay. All right. So eyes can be open or closed. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to is think of the thing that you use to cope when maybe you're feeling a little bit stressed or something like that or upset. Okay. So just bringing that to your mind where you might do it. If it was on your phone, like what might you be looking at? If it was food, what kind of food is it? Where might you eat that food? Okay, now imagine that. Now imagine someone came and told you you can't do that anymore. Like, you gotta you've got to stop. Okay, can't do that anymore. They're stopping you. Okay, and then notice where some tension or bracing might come up in the body when someone tells you you can't do that thing. Okay, so just notice where there might be some tension or what feeling comes up when you're told you can't do that habit. And then if you'd like, you can take a hand and put it over that area. So maybe for me, it's the shoulder. And if it was in a space you can't reach, like if it's in your back, you can just lean into some support. So just giving support to wherever the area is. Okay, and then just notice that area. Maybe notice the edges of the bracing or the sensation. Notice if this sensation had a color, what color would it be? And it can just be whatever comes to mind. If nothing comes to mind, that's fine. Is there a texture? Is there an image that comes up or a word that comes up with this sensation? Or is there a movement, like an impulse to move? Just notice that. And if there is an impulse to move, you can go ahead and just mindfully and slowly follow that movement. So just remembering the behavior is not the problem. It's a solution for your nervous system. Okay. And then notice if maybe you've felt this tension before. Maybe this tension is kind of familiar and you felt it before. So just taking a moment to notice that. And just as you do that, I'm just going to talk a little bit. So, someone, for example, maybe binges on food, maybe a deeper need is comfort. Or if they overwork, it may be a way that they feel worthy and valuable. Or if they're scrolling on their phone excessively, maybe, and so many of us do this, it can be a way to escape some overwhelm. Okay. And now imagine that person has now said you can do the behavior, you can go do that thing. So imagine you're doing that thing. So I'm going to imagine I'm scrolling on my phone now, looking at the videos I want to look at, and notice how that shows up in your body. And for me, there's a bit of pleasantness, there's some opening in my shoulders. So notice the relief that that behavior provides for you. Or maybe it's reassurance seeking. So you've looked for reassurance maybe through Google or a person. Notice what it's like to receive that. So noticing that area of pleasantness. If it's hard to find pleasantness in the body, you can go, or neutrality, you can go to like the fingers or the toes or even the tip of the nose, noticing where it shows up in your body. And again, is there a word or an image that comes up with that sensation? Is there a movement? You can follow the movement. Just stay with that pleasant sensation. And then just notice like the work isn't taking away, simply taking away your coping habit. It's helping the nervous system find enough safety and meeting the underlying need that the coping mechanism or the coping habit isn't something you have to do anymore. Okay. I was just thinking I was doing this with a client around smoking, and um, they were really surprised at just how much relief imagining smoking brought them. That's something they're trying to quit. Okay. All right. And then we're just going to leave that practice. So opening the eyes, wiggling the hips a little bit, just checking the time, and then looking around your space, seeing where your eyes land. There's something pleasant, noticing my voice, and then noticing any movement you want to bring in. And stretching, and then just taking a moment to just thank yourself for giving your body a lot of attention and time to see kind of what unfolds and what works for you and what feels good or what doesn't feel good. And thank you so much for attending. I'm going to stop the recording. If you're here live, you're welcome to stay on for a little bit if you have any questions. I hope everyone has a wonderful day.